Hello, everybody, and welcome to Classical Chats. I'm Giorgia Ghizzoni, and I'm speaking to you from San Francisco.
I'm Ghizzoni&Ylimutka, and I'm speaking to you from Sibelius Academy, Helsinki.
And we're glad to welcome Umberto Clerici, great cellist and mentor for all of us, who's speaking today from Italy. Welcome, Umberto.
Hi, thanks.
We invited Umberto to this chat because he seemed like a perfect role model for our web viewers of Classical Chats, in that Umberto is up to a lot of different areas of competence in his career. He's active as a soloist, he's active as a chamber musician and in creative projects. He's active as a teacher at the Sydney Conservatorium of Music, as well as a principal cellist at the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. He seemed like a role model to us because in our field and theoretical research for this generation of musicians of the current generation of classical musicians, careers are starting to become diversified portfolios of income in their structure. And so Umberto's case seemed to us the perfect one to analyze and to hear about from an insider point of view. So, room for the interview. Kiki, the word to you.
Yeah, so Umberto, could you tell us, how did you get started? What led you to your current career path? And how did you make it happen?
Well, it seemed very complex and it seemed very planned or structured, but actually I just followed what I was thinking it was the right thing to do or what really interested me. So actually, I don't know if I can be any model or even suggestive element, because I started like everybody, every young soloist starts. So you study, you go to master classes, you try to enter in the best classes possible, and then you go to competitions. And actually, all this mix, if you are lucky and actually in the right place and right moment, then you start to have a sort of career, means a series of concerts. And then actually I have to say that a national competition was the most important for me when I was very young, actually 20 or 21. And actually it gave me many concerts and with orchestras. And because I met many conductors after this, most of the time they re-invited me more and more in other orchestras through the same conductor or in the same orchestra to different conductors. So actually then it became a network of contacts. So for 10 years I basically played only solo. And then I got a proposal to try to play. Of course, I already played in orchestra. I did a lot of chamber music, of course, but chamber music nowadays is difficult to define as the main, I would say, the main element of a career, except if you really play in a quartet. But then the quartet is, in a way, the only element of your career most of the time. Then if you really marry this kind of path. So basically, they told me, did you ever try to play opera? And I said, no. And say, would you like to try? And say, why not? I mean, we are here for trying different experiences. And actually, I really enjoyed the craziness of the theater, but I also really enjoyed the sharing of every element, even silly elements, not necessarily in the music I'm talking, but not necessarily the great art, but also how 100 or 150 people that somebody sings, somebody plays, somebody conducts, somebody suggests, actually they can blend together. So it started like that. And then, of course, after some years of opera, then I was very curious about the symphony repertoire. So I went to Sydney just in a way as a joke. This principal cello position was vacant since many, many years. And then when I did the audition, I say, would you like to take the job? And I say, well, why not? I took 1 year actually to really go. So, I mean, I really followed more than Georgia was telling about different stream of incomes. I think this is very true, but this is the consequence of a stream of interests, much more than a specific research on the market saying if you work in a certain orchestra, then you can earn a certain amount of money, and then you. I mean, I was never so focused, I would say, maybe unfortunately, but so I found a sort of balance now that not necessarily is going to be forever like that, but actually in this moment I'm doing everything I was imagining that I could do in the music, but in the same time, actually, so I can really play in a symphony orchestra. That means that you can play from a very small group, chamber elements, and arrive to play Strauss. And then I'm teaching in very good, actually few but very good students at university. And then I'm able to do solo projects that actually paradoxically are much less than in the past, but for me are much more interesting. And this is also, this will be interesting to develop what is about the time.
Indeed. And actually, when you say multiple streams of interest, I like this definition, and I would like to expand on this a bit. In a previous conversation with you, we talked about how many times students get develop themselves and their musical skills in conservatory, and they focus on learning how to play, and then at the end of conservatory they look at what's possible and at what they should do or what jobs are available. For you, it sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, if you chose a different method for yourself, so you always followed the path that you were interested in, so it was always clear to you what you wanted to do, what was interesting for you to do. Is that so?
Yeah, I think it was more interesting for me being a musician, like being any kind of artist, but actually being a human being is about being interested in the music. It's not about, I don't think it's a definition for a soloist and then a chamber musician and an orchestra musician and a teacher. I mean, particularly in 2015, this is crazy to think about this. Even because if you think about conservatoriums in general, the name, I mean, the definition of conservatorium is to be conservative. So actually, the idea by itself of teaching and learning music in a conservatorium, it's already in the past. What I say this just for a reason, because everybody says is the musical world is more crowded and there are less jobs. And actually, I don't think it's true. I think in the old way of thinking about jobs, so orchestra jobs or academy jobs, of course, they are slightly less, even if you think that in the last 20 years, the world expanded so much. So there are many orchestras in China, many orchestras in Brazil, Australia developed earlier. But in the last 20 years, there are many countries that actually created new orchestras. So it's true that in America and in Europe, actually probably there was a reduction of this, but overall, I don't think there is a reduction anyway. But the second, if you think that 20 years ago was very few the amount of jobs that you could do with the music education, but now it's with internet, with the communication, with video, with recording. I mean, it's incredible. Also in the management of orchestras, on my orchestra, there are many people in the management, but most of them has a musical education, if not a musical history. So if we think about a job like we were thinking 20 years ago, then probably it's much more difficult. But if we are creative, then I think there are much more opportunities in education, in musical therapy. I mean, we can stay here for 20 days just to list them.
To list the possibilities.
Yeah. So what would you do now if you were, let's say, 27 years old and you would be graduating now, or what would you do with your career? If you would you would go back in time, but you live in this career.
So the first thing is to understand what is successful for single persons. Because very often when students ask me, what should I do? The question is, what do you want? Because because what should I do? It's not the right question. It's like how, but the real question is what. So what I mean is because you can be successful for yourself in a completely different way. Because, most of the time the success in terms of public success, it can be sometimes, most of the time, against integrity, real choices, because actually you enter in a path that is a little bit a trap. I remember when I was playing only solo, it's very risky to play only solo, because first you don't know in 3 or 4 years what is going to happen. I mean, if you are going to have the same number of concerts. The second is that you don't know if your body, it will be safe. So forever. So actually, thinking about being successful, it's difficult if you don't know what you want. If we are talking about being in the music, what I always ask is, how what is music for you? How important is in your life? So is it important only if you become a renowned musician, or is it important if you can live with the music? And also, what does it mean live with the music? Is to own 6 cars, or to actually have a normal life? Because actually this is not obvious, because there is no answer for this otherwise. Then when I think about successful in terms of a normal career, that you can have a normal income rate, and also normal, if you live in London or in Sydney, the amount of money that you have to generate is something, while if you live, I was in Budapest yesterday, if you are in Budapest, then that is a very cultivated city, but much less expensive. So actually it's difficult to talk about in general.
What is your current definition of success? I agree with you that a definition of success is something very personal, and it can be completely different from one person to the other. What is your current one?
Well, for me, it's freedom. This is the only success meter that I have. Freedom means freedom to do, of course, with limits, what you like, what are you interested about, to take your time to do things that are important for you. So for me, this is the success, because when you are even in the top career, but you are not able anymore to choose what is good or what is bad for you, what is important, what is not, I wouldn't really consider this successful. So for me, and this is the reason why I divided my life in completely different streams in music, because not only in the incomes, but also in the personal engagement, it's so different to build a project with a pianist and research for, I don't know, 1 month, or to do a big project with lights and designer and this, with a big orchestra that you take 1 year of work, maybe researching with different universities, than play when I'm in Sydney, playing every week 4 or 5 concerts, or I would say 4 or 5, not maybe not, but 3 or 4 concerts in the orchestra with different programs. I mean, it's so for me, in this way, I feel more free than I was when I played only solo. This is the thing. Also because I have the luxury to say, okay, I have 3 weeks. I can take off these 3 weeks, and then I can really work on what I want. It means practicing, means projecting, means trying, means experimenting, while before I didn't feel was possible.
You make freedom sound very easy. So now many musicians might say, I don't have a chance for that. He is so good, and I don't necessarily have the talent for it. What would you say to these musicians that are maybe, they know that there's a chance, but the chance feels like it's far away?
Yeah, of course. I mean, also about when we think about jobs in music, or music as a job, I mean, it only in the last 50, 60 years, we could consider, maybe a little bit more, but not more than 70, 80, since a musician is really paid and has a sort of salary and is providing a service with all the guarantee of a job. I mean, it was never like that. I'm not talking about the genius. I'm talking about normal orchestra players. So even at the time of the famous composer, there was no job. It's not a job. So if you aim for that, you have to start to try to audition for orchestras immediately and hope to get a job. Sometimes people struggle so much because it's so difficult and actually so cruel, the audition, because actually we are just, you play 3 minutes of something that is even not what you should play, because you play in orchestra, you play with the others, and actually there you play alone. And then some people that they spend 10 years in training and trying to do this, then when they enter an orchestra, they discover it's not what they like. So say, excuse me, what did you think about this 10 years ago? I think if the music, and once I was doing this topic with a group of students, and there was a professional singer that when I asked, what is music for you? And people say, I think it's interesting, I really like their feeling to be on stage. And this singer was saying, for me, music is the reason that I am here. I mean, without music, it wouldn't be the same. My life is the music. So it's not about I live with the music, but in a way the music lives for me and with me. And then it's very different. Then you find the way. We can be, of course, more specific. So I would say if you want to have a normal path, And of course, it's much easier, Machiavelli already was saying, it's much easier to try to target higher. And then the trajectory of the arrow anyway will go down. So if you are young, you really have to try to when you can, so when you have the time to practice, really try to start to be the best of yourself in any different possibilities. But of course, the physical training, we say technical training, is important, because sometimes students think that after 25, now I can start to practice, that this is possible, but not to stop. That's what I say.
Yeah. And Umberto, what other skills do you recognize young classical musicians need to face the music industry? So that the world has changed, and as we said, of course, it's necessary to be at the best of your musical skills. What else do you recognize is there to be developed if you want to succeed in whatever your definition of success may be in the music industry?
Well, in a way, if we call music industry, so in a little bit of show business, we are talking about different abilities. So you understand that to play the same concerto or the same sonata in the same way or in a different way, but more or less in the same, proposing in the same way, presenting the same way, it's honestly difficult to think that has a big future. So actually, if you are creative and you can have, even with people that helps you, because also this could be sometimes from inside is not so easy, but actually the possibilities in communication, in projects, in being different. I mean, I have many examples of musicians that are able to improvise. That is something that actually we lost many years ago when composers and performers divided, for example, or people that are very good in talking about music. And so usually, but they are also musicians. I mean, it's not musicologists and musicians, but actually a sort of divulgation of music. But it can be, I mean, it really can have many opportunities. There are people that are very good in creating businesses and networks. Mm-hmm. And then this is also could be, I mean, it's not really connected with the music itself, but if you want to be noticed, you need to have something different. And if this something is honest and is not just wearing leather pants because could be a good try, then probably it could break the interest of promoters, but also of the audience. I mean, I believe in honesty in the sense that, I mean, I'm like this, I present what I think. I really think that in my personal music making, when I do projects, I really think that there is a big barrier between a language that is a little bit old in the sense of language, but could be very modern in feelings and in communication, but not through the communication itself, but try to make understanding different aspects of the music from people. I mean, what are the connection between the notes, or what is the connection between you and this composer? Mm-hmm. And this is, for me, is interesting, or to create programs that have a inner connection that actually people can go like a gourmet dinner. They can understand what is the contrast, what is the continuity of this, and not just pieces put in there just because you have to fulfill 75 minutes. That is a normal program.
Absolutely. Umberto, would you say that you're at all a businessman, or at least that you have a basic understanding of how business works?
I think I have a basic understanding how the business works. I don't know if I'm a businessman, because I don't believe in some of the parts of this business. But of course, we can't be naive. It works in a way that if you want to exist in the music, you need to do certain things. I mean, competition, for example, to come back to the past, 20 years ago was very easy. I mean, you went to competition, you got a prize in a big competition, you could get a career. You went to big classes, I don't know, in New York was Gingles and this, and you could become a concertmaster. I mean, there was a quite clear path since you were young. Now, sometimes you are 30 and you don't know actually what is your space and where is your place in the music world. But I think that, for example, competition are still good, at least as a training, and at least as to be known in the musical world. Actually, maybe they don't change directly your life, but in a way, always when I see my friends that were doing competitions with me, actually they are always in the still now somewhere in the music, principal cello somewhere. People that play chamber music in big groups. So actually, in a way, it becomes a selection not because of the competition itself, but because how you actually behave or you become through these experiences. So and I have people that actually help me in the sense of promotion, but also in the sense of making the idea that I have more organic or more focused or successful.
So you delegate some things that you don't feel directly that are maybe not your favorite thing, or you don't feel completely expert in, I don't know, design or business side of thing, marketing side of things, and so on. You delegate to people who actually know more about it and know you, so they can act in your stead. Is that so?
Yeah. Exactly, but this I took many years to understand what I wanted to, because actually, depends about which management you can choose. If they choose, of course, a big management, but actually you don't have any control of what is going to be, and also what is going to, how you are going to behave for them, through them, and for them. Actually, what I say is that my choice was a much smaller management, actually even almost a personal assistant, that actually she is a very good musician, and actually we can really talk about music, and she knows what for me is interesting, also because I don't have to live on concerts, so actually we can really project things that, and she knows what, and also the personal brander that is she knows very well about the marketing, but still, she knows that I don't want to be a product to be sold in a market, but actually we want to create an interest, and then because of the interest being actually sold to music promoters. So I don't start to see, like in a normal marketing, what is missing in the market, and I try to achieve that, but actually what can be interesting for me, and then how can we put this in a sort of musical market. Yeah. So I had to struggle to find also in myself what was important for me. And of course, I found that actually I didn't have probably the connections, but also the attitude for some of the big managements, while these, for me, it works better because I can really talk about music.
Right, that makes sense. I also talked to an administrator and an agent from New York City in a different interview, and he was saying that, so I asked him what's their criteria to take up new ensembles in their roster or new soloists, and he says that competition winners are no total indicator for them either. So they will go to competitions, but not necessarily they will approach the competition winner, because they need so many more openness from the musician. They need the musician to be able to social media, to understand how the business side of things works, and to have a personality, and to know who they are, and to have a personal mission, and so on and so forth. So you went to a competition, you did not come first, yet your career became wonderful after that. You said it was for you a training, and also you got kind of a visibility platform. Right? Yeah. Your career didn't go straight as it would have gone 20 years ago, like agents come get you and then you become the next soloist who travels every single week and holds 3 concerts a week with only a half-hour rehearsal with the orchestra, and so on and so forth. So what would you say competitors today should look for in competitions, if not the big jump that's not there anymore? So why would you go to a competition, and what should you have ready when you go to that competition?
Well, this agent was actually much more mild than most of the other agents, because some of the other agents says, if somebody come to me and ask, can I be represented by you, and has 2 or 3 prizes, particularly first prize in big competitions, They even don't want to listen to this. So actually, it seems almost the opposite of it, which should be. I mean, competition is a long matter. What I think is very strongly connected with the academical world more than the concert world. So it means that many times it comes. I mean, the jury are full of teachers, and the teachers has a different streams of ideas probably, and actually there is a difficult balance sometimes. It doesn't mean that the winners are not the best sometimes, or most of the time, or even every time. This is not the point. But just what they are looking for probably is a little bit different than what a promoter or an agent is looking for. This is the first thing. The second is that, it's true that maybe competition, they don't do, for sure, they don't give anymore what it was in the past. But actually they are now, because everything is on stream, and actually because this idea of voyeurism that many has, particularly students, to see the competition through internet, actually it gives a lot of visibility. I mean, it becomes an event and that has a lot of contacts. So this could be a platform to present yourself. I mean, when you go to a competition, I don't think anymore that you can play in a certain way, because you never know what is the right way. I mean, particularly if the competition is big. I think as more as you try to be personal, as more you can be successful, even if the competition is not successful. And personal means not trying to be something different, somebody else, but I mean, to try to say, and if you have a strong view of music, somebody will listen to it. I got more contacts because of private things, and say, I'm a pianist from Korea, and I really listen to you, can we play together? Or instead of managements, because I mean, but for sure it's enormous training, because, you have to go there, prepare for months, actually try to be called like a sport player and play for 1 month different rounds. And this is already a very enriching one. Just if you go there trying to imagine to have the right recipe for this, I don't believe in that. Maybe it's right for somebody, but I don't believe in that. If we consider, for example, if I see my orchestra and there are some of the top soloists every year that comes, I mean, in the young generation, I would say the majority of them never went even to a competition. So probably it's not really the key of, but I was asking to most of them, how did you start? And actually, it's completely different. Somebody said, I met that person, and that person made me debut with a great orchestra, and it started. And there is no. I think it's more interesting to focus on creativity and to say, okay, this is what I like, this is what I believe into, and let's try to show to the world that actually this is my inner world, and I think that music is important. I mean, also we were talking about how important is the music for them, but also they should think, what is the music in the society? So why are we here talking about music, and how can we earn a life on music? It's difficult. So it's almost impossible to answer, but I think music is a very social mission, particularly when the society has a very high wellness range. And so, of course, it becomes superfluous, but in a way, it becomes one of the few things there are to still drag people to the absence of humanity and to the feelings and the intellectual development instead of buying things. So, I mean, for the competition, we can talk forever. I just think that could be interested to go, but you can't really rely on the success in your career after that.
Okay, let's start wrapping up. So, Georgia, the main things that have been coming up is that I think the interest stream that we were talking earlier, find out what is interesting for you, and then start building from there. And then look for different opportunities with different people. It's not just one straight line. Then we talked about what is actually music meaning to you. That's another very important thing. Then we talked about how, as a young musician, what is the kind of the career path after academy, and how to prepare yourself over there. And Georgia, if you want to take over for the rest of it.
Yes, I mean, we also went through competitions, how to face them and what to expect from them and what not to expect from them, which might be important. Also, what skills are helpful for young musicians to face a career in music, and also the awareness that music is not a job, yet you can create a job on it. So the two things are completely different.
Exactly.
I think it's a lot of meaningful lessons that you shared today with us and with our web audience. Umberto, anything you would like to add?
What I forgot, or probably it was not clear enough, is that when you see from outside, you can see that the demand is to have musicians with something distinctive. And for me, distinctive should be in the music. But of course, in the market becomes very often out of the music. You can recognize because of this kind of shoes or the haircut or whatever. But this is the main point why competitions are less and less successful, because actually I can see that when you have a series of 7, 8, 10 soloists in a year in the orchestra, you can remember only the one that they were very strong, or they had something special, or they played something special. And this you can remember. Otherwise, even if they are very good, it's difficult if the personality is very foggy. And the same, and this is important to know, the same in orchestra auditions. Of course, it depends about the orchestra and about the panel, but when you listen now 200 players in a row, you can only remember the best, in somebody that reminds some spark of artistry, then they have a special sound, or they have courageous choices within, of course, the brackets that you are auditioning for a section in an orchestra, so it's useless to be crazy. But and actually, most of the students, they focus on details and they try to be as more precise and more clean and more neutral possible. But in my opinion, also being in a panel of audition, I was always, after the 5th or the 10th, you can't listen anymore, except there's somebody that comes. Maybe he's very nervous even, and he's shaking, but something happens, and you say, okay, this is a musician that wants to say something, and actually then it becomes, and it's, so at the end for me, it's the same for orchestra musicians, for soloists, is somebody that can give you something that you remember, and I hope this is going to be in a musical sense and not externally, but this is not my choice, actually.
Right. And I think this is a great note to conclude on, because it would be a great topic to have in a future interview for Classical Chats, on how to cultivate that spark that makes you different on all levels, and how to make it super clear to your listeners, to your viewers, and so on and so forth. So thank you for the inspiration. Thank you so much for the wisdom and the sharing and the time together.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Pleasure for me.
Yes. And a big hug to all of our web viewers, and to both of you in Helsinki and in Italy.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.